I'm Maya, 29, and I trusted my husband Ray with everything. We've had Sunday dinners with his family for 3 years. My mother-in-law Linda, father-in-law Tom, sister-in-law Tessa. Same routine, same table, same small talk. 8 weeks ago, I told Ray my biggest secret. I'm bisexual, I whispered. Please keep this between us until I'm ready. Of course, he said. It's between us. Last Sunday, I'm passing the mashed potatoes when Linda suddenly hugs me too long. Honey, we're here for you during this difficult time. I freeze. What difficult time? My mother-in-law smiles too sweetly. Your situation, dear. Ray told us you're struggling with personal discoveries. My fork drops. Ray's face goes white. Ray told you what exactly? That you're bisexual, honey. We just want to support you. The room spins. I stare at my husband across the table. You promised me. His face crumbles. His sister Tessa jumps in. It's okay, Maya. We're family. But I'm watching Ray realize he's been caught. He broke my trust to manage his fear. His family has been discussing my private life for months. Then at Tessa's birthday party, Ray's drunk cousin Derek points at my husband and laughs. Ray's like that too, you know. Gay. Or bi. Whatever. Like you. Ray's secret explodes in front of everyone. The same secret he protected by sacrificing mine. What happens when the person you trust most becomes the weapon used against you? If you're hearing this story, tell me in the comments. Where in the world are you listening from? Before we begin today's story, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Now let's get started. Maya Hart stood at her kitchen counter, fingers wrapped around a coffee mug that had gone cold an hour ago. The apartment felt too quiet, like the walls were holding their breath. She turned toward the living room where her husband Ray sat with his laptop, the blue glow painting his face in sharp angles. Ray, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I need to tell you something. He looked up, closing the screen halfway. What's wrong? Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She set the mug down with trembling hands and met his eyes. I think I'm bisexual. The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Ray's face went blank for 3 seconds. Then he nodded too fast, like he was checking items off a mental list. Okay, he said, standing up and walking toward her. Okay, I can handle this. I'm your husband. His arms came around her shoulders, but his embrace felt stiff. Rehearsed. Maya pressed her face against his chest and heard his heartbeat racing beneath the cotton of his shirt. But don't. Ray's voice caught. He pulled back to look at her. Don't do anything. I mean, we're married. This doesn't change anything, right? Maya heard the fear underneath his supportive words. The way he said, anything, made her stomach twist. She nodded anyway, grateful that he hadn't walked away. Of course not, she whispered. I just needed you to know. Ray's phone buzzed against the coffee table. The screen lit up with a photo of an elderly woman surrounded by pill bottles and a sticky note that read, SSA letter call. The name above the image said, Mom. Your mother, Maya said. Ray glanced at the phone and flipped it face down. She can wait. But Maya had already seen the slight panic in his eyes when the phone buzzed. The same look he got whenever Linda called about her Medicare paperwork or the mysterious charges appearing on her bank statements. They moved to the couch together. Ray kept his arm around her, but his fingers drummed against her shoulder like he was counting something. Maya tried to settle into the moment, to feel relieved that her secret was finally shared. Instead, she felt exposed. Promise me something, she said, turning to face him. Promise you won't tell anyone. Not yet. Ray's eyes flickered toward his phone again. Of course. This is between us. He kissed her forehead, his lips warm and dry. But when he pulled away, Maya caught him staring at the wall behind her head, like he was working through a problem she couldn't see. I love you, he said. The words came out too practiced. That night, Maya lay in bed listening to the sounds of their apartment. The heater clicked on. A car alarm chirped twice in the distance. And then, from the hallway, she heard Ray's voice speaking in hushed tones. No, I'm fine, he was saying. Just processing some things. Maya's eyes opened in the darkness. She held her breath and listened harder. It's complicated, Ray continued. I might need some advice soon. The conversation lasted another minute before she heard the soft click of their bedroom door opening. Ray slipped back into bed, careful not to wake her. But Maya's heart was pounding too loud for sleep. She stared at the ceiling and replayed his promise from earlier. "This is between us." The words felt borrowed now, like something he'd said to buy time rather than to protect her. The next morning, Ray made coffee and toast without meeting her eyes. He kissed her cheek before leaving for work, the same routine they'd followed for 3 years. But Maya noticed how he checked his phone twice before walking out the door. She sat at their kitchen table, surrounded by the ordinary details of their shared life. The salt and pepper shakers Linda had given them last Christmas. Ray's work badge lying next to a stack of unopened mail. A grocery list stuck to the refrigerator with Maya's handwriting asking for milk and bread. Everything looked the same, but something had shifted overnight, like furniture moved just inches to the left. Maya couldn't name what was different, but she felt it in her chest, a heaviness that hadn't been there before she'd spoken her truth. She picked up Ray's work badge and studied his photo. His smile looked confident there, professional. Maya wondered if that was the face he wore when he talked about her to other people. When he made decisions about their life without including her. The phone rang, startling her. Linda's name appeared on the caller ID. "Hi, Linda," Maya answered, trying to keep her voice normal. "Oh, Maya dear. Is Ray there?" "He's at work. Can I take a message?" There was a pause. "Just tell him I got another one of those Medicare letters. Someone's trying to steal my benefits again. The family needs to stick together on this." Maya frowned. "Stick together how?" "Well," Linda's voice took on a conspiratorial tone, "when people try to break up families, you have to be smart about who you trust. Ray understands these things." The line went quiet for a moment. Maya felt like she was missing half of a conversation that had already started somewhere else. "I'll tell him you called," Maya said finally. "Thank you, dear. And Maya? If you ever need to talk about anything, family problems or personal struggles, I'm here. We all are." Maya hung up the phone with Linda's words echoing in her mind. Personal struggles. The phrase felt too specific to be casual. She walked to the bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror. Her reflection looked tired, uncertain. Maya touched her own face and wondered what Ray had seen there last night when she'd asked him to keep her secret. Had he seen someone he wanted to protect? Or someone whose truth was too dangerous to keep hidden? Maya's reflection didn't have an answer. But for the first time since her confession, she wondered if Ray's promise had been meant to comfort her or to manage her. The apartment felt smaller suddenly. Like the walls had moved closer while she wasn't paying attention. Maya sat back down at the kitchen table and noticed Ray's coffee cup was still there, half empty and forgotten. She picked it up and carried it to the sink. The ceramic felt cold against her palm, and Maya realized that coldness had been there all along. She just hadn't been brave enough to feel it until now. Outside their window, Chicago moved through its morning rhythm. People walked to work, cars honked at intersections, and life continued exactly as it had before. But inside their apartment, Maya sat with the growing understanding that her truth had changed something fundamental. She wasn't sure yet what that change would cost her. But she could feel it coming, like weather moving across the lake toward shore. Maya looked at her phone and considered calling her sister in Portland. Or her college friend who lived downtown. Someone who could remind her that her feelings were valid and her request for privacy was reasonable. Instead, she sat in the quiet and let herself wonder what Ray was doing right now. Whether he was working or thinking about their conversation. Whether he was keeping his promise or finding reasons why he shouldn't. The heater clicked on again, filling the silence with mechanical warmth. Maya closed her eyes and tried to imagine what would happen next. But the future felt uncertain in a way it never had before, like she'd opened a door without knowing what room she was stepping into. All she knew for certain was that her secret was out now, shared with the person she trusted most. And that trust would either hold them together or tear them apart. Maya just hoped she'd have some say in which direction they fell. 1 week later, Maya drove through Chicago's evening traffic toward the weekly family dinner. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual as she turned onto Linda's street. The familiar row of brick houses looked the same, but Maya felt like she was approaching something that had shifted without warning. Ray had left work early to help his mother with her Medicare paperwork. "Just the usual stuff," he'd said when Maya asked. "More fraud alerts and identity theft warnings." Maya parked behind Ray's car and sat for a moment, gathering herself. Through Linda's front window, she could see the warm glow of the dining room light and the silhouettes of Ray's family moving around the table. Everything looked normal, welcoming, even. She grabbed the bottle of wine she'd brought and walked up the front steps. Before she could knock, the door swung open. "Maya, sweetheart." Linda's voice was louder than usual, bright and rehearsed. She pulled Maya into a hug that lasted several seconds too long. When Linda finally let go, her hands remained on Maya's shoulders. "We're so glad you're here," Linda said, her eyes searching Maya's face with an intensity that felt intrusive. "We're here for you, you know. Whatever you need." Maya's stomach dropped. She forced a smile and laughed, hoping she'd misheard. "Here for me? I'm fine. Just tired from work." Linda's smile didn't waver. "Of course you are, dear. Come in. Dinner's almost ready." The house smelled like roasted chicken and warm bread, the same comforting scents Maya had grown to love over 3 years of Sunday dinners. But now the familiar felt foreign, like she was walking into a stage set designed to look like Linda's home. In the dining room, Tessa was setting out wine glasses with careful precision. She looked up when Maya entered and her expression brightened in a way that seemed calculated. "Maya." Perfect timing. Tessa moved around the table toward her, wine bottle in hand. "Chicago's so modern these days, isn't it? People can be whoever they are now. It's wonderful." The words hit Maya like cold water. She accepted the glass of wine Tessa offered, but her hand trembled slightly. "Yeah," she managed. "Totally." Ray emerged from the kitchen carrying a serving dish. When their eyes met, he looked away quickly and busied himself with arranging the food on the table. Maya watched him avoid her gaze and felt something twist in her chest. "Ray," she said carefully. "Did you say something to anyone? About anything?" Ray's head snapped up too fast. "About what?" His voice was louder than necessary, defensive in a way that made everyone else at the table go quiet. Maya studied his face. Ray was rubbing his thumb along the edge of his wine glass like he was trying to sand something smooth. His jaw was tight, and there were small lines around his eyes that hadn't been there a week ago. "Nothing," Maya said finally. "Just wondering." Linda bustled in from the kitchen with the last of the dinner plates. As she set them down, Maya noticed a stack of official-looking papers spread across the side table. Social Security Administration letterhead was visible on the top document, along with what looked like insurance claim forms and a printout of an email marked "Urgent" in red letters. "More identity theft warnings," Linda said, following Maya's gaze. "Someone tried to access my Medicare account again. Can you imagine? You can't trust anyone these days. Not even family, sometimes." The irony of Linda's words hung in the air like smoke. Maya took a sip of wine and tried to process what was happening. The conversation felt scripted, like everyone except her had received talking points before she arrived. Ray's father, Tom, cleared his throat from his spot at the head of the table. "Let's say grace," he said, extending his hands toward the people on either side of him. They joined hands in their usual circle. Maya found herself between Ray and Tessa, their palms warm against hers. Tom's prayer was the same one he'd said for years, asking for blessings on the food and gratitude for family. But Maya couldn't focus on the familiar words. Instead, she was hyper-aware of the way Ray's hand felt stiff in hers, and how Tessa's fingers squeezed just a little too tight. When the prayer ended, conversation resumed with an artificial lightness that made Maya feel like she was watching a performance. Linda asked about Maya's job at the marketing firm, but her questions felt pointed, like she was fishing for information rather than making small talk. "Are you handling the stress okay, dear?" Linda asked, passing the potatoes. "Work can be so overwhelming when you're processing things." Maya's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Processing things? Oh, you know," Linda waved her hand vaguely. "Life changes. Personal discoveries. It's a lot for anyone to handle alone." Ray shifted in his chair. "Mom, Maya's doing fine." "Right, Maya?" But Maya wasn't fine. She was sitting at a dinner table with people who seemed to know something about her that she'd only shared with one person. The realization settled in her stomach like a stone. "Excuse me," Maya said, standing abruptly. "I need some air." She walked to the back porch, leaving the sliding door open behind her. The October air was crisp against her face, cutting through the wine-warm flush of anxiety. Maya leaned against the porch railing and stared at Linda's small backyard, trying to make sense of what she'd just experienced. After a few minutes, Ray appeared beside her. "You okay?" he asked. Maya turned to look at him. In the porch light, his face looked pale and uncertain. "Why did everyone talk to me like I was fragile?" she asked. "Like I needed support for something specific?" Ray's mouth opened and closed. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Maya recognized as his tell when he was nervous. "You're imagining it," he said finally. "Mom's just worried about you. She worries about everyone." "That's not what this was, Ray. They knew something. Something I only told you." Ray stared out at the yard, his profile sharp against the yellow porch light. "You're spiraling," he said quietly. "Stop reading into everything." But Maya wasn't spiraling. For the first time in a week, her mind felt crystal clear. The strange phone call from Linda. The two bright smiles and carefully chosen words. Ray's inability to meet her eyes. "You told them," she said. It wasn't a question. Ray's silence was answer enough. Maya felt something crack open inside her chest. Not heartbreak, exactly. More like the sound of a lock breaking when someone uses the wrong key too many times. "I asked you for one thing," she whispered. "One boundary." "It's not like that," Ray said, turning toward her. "It was. I needed someone to talk to. And it's just family." "Just family?" Maya's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "Ray, you promised me. You promised." "I know," Ray said, reaching for her hand. "I know. But they're on our side. They want to help." Maya pulled her hand away. "Help with what? I'm not broken. I don't need fixing." Ray's face crumpled. "That's not what I meant. This is new for me too. I didn't know how to handle it alone." Maya stared at him, seeing clearly for the first time how much her truth had scared him. Scared him enough to break her trust without considering what that betrayal would cost her. "So you decided for me," she said. "You decided my privacy wasn't as important as your comfort." "Maya, no." She held up her hand. "I need to think." Maya walked back through the dining room, where Linda, Tessa, and Tom sat in uncomfortable silence. She could feel their eyes on her as she gathered her purse and coat. "Leaving so soon?" Linda asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Thank you for dinner," Maya said politely. "I'm not feeling well." She drove home through the dark Chicago streets, her hands steady on the wheel but her mind racing. Ray's car remained in Linda's driveway. Maya was grateful for the solitude, for the chance to sit with her anger without having to perform forgiveness she didn't feel. In their apartment, Maya poured herself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table. The space felt different now, charged with new knowledge about the man she'd married. She thought about the promises they'd made to each other at their small courthouse wedding 3 years ago. Ray had squeezed her hand and said, "Whatever happens, we keep it between us." At the time, Maya had thought that was love. Now she understood it was control. Ray came home an hour later, moving quietly through the apartment like he was trying not to wake her. But Maya was sitting in the living room, still fully dressed. "We need to talk," she said. Ray sat down across from her, his face full of the kind of regret that comes too late to undo damage. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know I messed up." "When?" Maya asked. "When did you tell them?" Ray's shoulders sagged. "The next day. After our conversation. I called my mom because I was confused and scared." "Scared of what?" "Of what it meant. For us. For our marriage." Maya nodded slowly. "So instead of talking to me about your fears, you talked to them about my truth." "I didn't think it would hurt you. They love you." "That's not the point, Ray. The point is that you made a choice about my life without including me in that choice." Ray leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "How'd I fix this?" Maya looked at her husband, really looked at him. She saw the boy who'd grown up in Linda's house, where family loyalty meant shared secrets and collective decision-making. She saw the man who'd promised to protect her but had protected himself instead. "I don't know if you can," she said honestly. They sat in silence for a long moment. Outside their window, Chicago settled into its late evening quiet. Maya could hear her neighbor's television through the thin wall and the distant hum of traffic on Lake Shore Drive. "I love you," Ray said finally. "I know," Maya replied. "But love isn't enough when trust is broken." Ray's face crumpled. "Don't say that, please." But Maya had already said it, and they both knew it was true. The question now wasn't whether their marriage could survive his betrayal. The question was whether Maya wanted it to. She stood up and walked toward their bedroom. "I'm tired," she said. "We'll talk more tomorrow." But as Maya lay in bed that night, listening to Ray brush his teeth and settle into his side of the mattress, she knew tomorrow wouldn't bring forgiveness. Tomorrow would bring decisions. And for the first time in her marriage, Maya was prepared to make those decisions alone. Maya spent the following week watching Ray like she was solving a puzzle. She noticed how he checked his phone before responding to her texts. How he paused before answering simple questions about his day. How he'd developed a habit of leaving the room when Linda called. By Friday, Maya had made a decision. She would go to Sunday dinner and test reality. "Are you sure?" Ray asked when she told him. "You seemed upset last time." "I'm fine," Maya said, watching his face carefully. "I want to see your family." Ray's relief was visible, but it came with something else Maya couldn't quite identify. Nervousness, maybe. Or guilt. Sunday arrived gray and cold, with the kind of October wind that cut through Chicago's streets like a warning. Maya dressed carefully in a blue sweater Linda had complimented before, armor disguised as thoughtfulness. The dining room looked the same as always. Linda's good china on the oak table she'd inherited from her mother. Candles that smelled like vanilla and cinnamon. A centerpiece of artificial fall leaves that had been there since Maya's first dinner 3 years ago. But Maya was looking for different things now. She counted pauses. She listened for subtext. She watched how people's eyes moved when she spoke. "How was your week, dear?" Linda asked as they settled into their chairs. "Good," Maya said, accepting the bowl of mashed potatoes Tom passed her. "Busy at work. You know how it is." "Oh, I'm sure," Linda said, her tone carrying just a hint of something Maya couldn't name. "It must be hard to concentrate when you're working through personal things." Maya's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "Personal things?" Tessa jumped in quickly, pouring wine with exaggerated focus. "Mom just means work stress. We all have it." But Linda wasn't finished. She leaned forward slightly, her voice taking on the caring but firm tone Maya had heard her use with Ray when he was younger. "You don't have to pretend with us, Maya. We're family." The word, pretend, hit like a slap. Maya set down her fork and looked around the table. Tom was focused intently on cutting his chicken. Tessa was staring at her wine glass. Ray looked like he wanted to disappear. "Pretend what?" Maya asked, her voice carefully controlled. The table went silent. Even the refrigerator's hum seemed louder in the sudden quiet. Linda blinked innocently. "Well, you know. Pretend everything's normal when you're clearly struggling." "I'm not struggling," Maya said, smiling too tightly. "I'm fine." "Of course you are," Linda said, reaching across the table to pat Maya's hand. "And you don't have to face this alone." "Face what alone?" Maya wanted to scream, but she kept her expression neutral and tried a different approach. "Is there something you all know that I don't?" she asked, looking directly at Ray. Ray jumped in fast, too fast. "Mom, stop." "Stop what?" Linda's voice rose with manufactured surprise. "Stop caring about family?" Tessa snorted into her wine glass, a sound that might have been laughter or derision. Maya felt her face burn with embarrassment she didn't deserve. "I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding," Maya said carefully. "Could someone please tell me what's going on?" The silence that followed was deafening. Maya could hear her own heartbeat and the distant sound of a dog barking in Linda's neighbor's yard. Then Linda stood up abruptly. "I need to get something from the kitchen," she said, but instead of heading toward the kitchen, she walked to the side table where her Medicare paperwork was stacked. Maya watched as Linda shuffled through the documents, pulling out what looked like an opened and resealed envelope. On top of the stack was a handwritten note in Linda's careful script, "Ray talked to US. She's by." Maya's breath caught. The note was sitting there in plain view, like Linda had forgotten to hide evidence of a crime that wasn't supposed to be a crime. "Everything okay, Mom?" Ray called from the table, his voice strained. "Just fine," Linda called back, but she was looking directly at Maya when she said it. Maya felt the room tilt. Her hands began to shake, so she placed them flat on the table to steady herself. "Ray," she said quietly, not taking her eyes off Linda. "Did you tell them?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was just beginning to spread. Ray's denial was automatic and desperate. "It slipped. Once. And then I needed help processing it. Processing it? Maya's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried across the room like a shout. Family doesn't count, Ray continued, his words tumbling over each other. It's not like I told strangers. Maya stood up so fast her chair scraped against the hardwood floor. The sound was harsh and final in the quiet room. I asked for one boundary, she said, her voice shaking with controlled anger. One. Keep this between us until I was ready. Maya, please, Ray started. No. Maya's voice cut through his plea. You decided my privacy was worth less than your comfort. You decided for me. Linda returned to the table, her expression carefully composed. Now, Maya, there's no need to get upset. We're all on the same side here. Whose side? Maya asked. Because it feels like everyone's on a side except me. Tom cleared his throat. Maybe we should all take a breath. Don't, Maya said, holding up her hand. Don't manage me. Don't calm me down. And don't tell me how I should feel about being betrayed by the person I trusted most. The word, betrayed, landed like a physical blow. Ray flinched, and Tessa looked down at her plate. Maya grabbed her purse from the floor beside her chair. Her hands were steady now, her voice clear. Thank you for dinner, she said to Linda. And thank you for showing me exactly where I stand in this family. She walked toward the front door, each step deliberate and final. Behind her, she heard Ray's chair scrape against the floor as he stood. Maya, wait. Please. She turned back to look at him. Ray was standing in Linda's dining room, surrounded by his family, looking lost and desperate. You chose them, Maya said simply. You chose their comfort over my trust. And now I'm choosing myself. Maya walked out of Linda's house and into the cold Chicago evening. She sat in her car for several minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, waiting for tears that didn't come. Instead, she felt something she hadn't expected: clarity. Ray had shown her exactly who he was when her truth became inconvenient for him. He was the man who would break promises to avoid difficult conversations. Who would sacrifice her privacy for his peace of mind? Who would let his family treat her like a problem to be managed rather than a person to be respected? Maya started the car and drove home through streets that looked different now, like she was seeing them with new eyes. The city was the same, but she was changed. She was alone now in a way she hadn't been an hour ago, but the solitude felt like possibility rather than loss. At home, Maya sat at their kitchen table and pulled out a notebook. She wrote, "What I know," at the top of the page and began making a list. Ray told his family my private information without my permission. Linda has written notes about our conversation. Everyone except me knew what was happening at dinner. Ray chose managing his discomfort over protecting my trust. This family treats secrets like shared property. Maya stared at the list for a long time. Then she turned the page and wrote, "What I need to do," at the top of a fresh sheet. The page stayed blank for now. But Maya knew that wouldn't last long. When Ray came home 2 hours later, he found Maya exactly where she'd been when she left Linda's house, sitting at their kitchen table, thinking. "I'm sorry," he said from the doorway. "I know I hurt you." Maya looked up at him. "Yes," she said, "you did." Ray sat down across from her, careful to leave space between them. "How'd I fix this?" Maya closed the notebook and folded her hands on top of it. "I don't think you can," she said. "At least not the way you want to." "What does that mean?" "It means," Maya said slowly, "that you broke something that can't be unbroken. And now we both have to live with that." Ray's face crumpled. "Don't say that. Please. I love you." "I know you do," Maya said. "But love isn't the same as respect. And respect isn't something you can promise your way back into." They sat in silence as the truth of her words settled between them. Outside their apartment window, Chicago moved through its Sunday evening rhythm. But inside their home, everything had changed. Maya had spent 3 years building a life with Ray based on trust and mutual protection. Now she was looking at the ruins of that foundation, trying to decide what could be salvaged and what needed to be torn down completely. "What happens now?" Ray asked. Maya opened the notebook and looked at the blank page titled, "What I Need to Do." "Now," she said, "I figure out how to protect myself." 3 days after the disaster at Linda's dinner table, Maya sat at her desk at work staring at an email she couldn't focus on reading. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ray. "Tessa's birthday party is Saturday. Please come. We need to look normal." The word, normal, hit Maya like a physical slap. She set the phone down without responding and tried to return to her marketing reports, but the phrase kept echoing in her head. We need to look normal. Not be normal. Look normal. As if their marriage was a performance that required audience maintenance. By Friday, Ray had asked her about the party 3 more times, each request carrying more desperation than the last. Everyone's expecting you, he said over breakfast, stirring his coffee with mechanical precision. If you don't show up, they'll think we're having problems. Maya looked up from her own mug. We are having problems. Ray's spoon clinked against the ceramic. But we don't need to advertise it. That evening, Maya found herself agreeing to go, not because she wanted to repair anything, but because she wanted to understand what Ray was so afraid of. What normal looked like to a man who'd broken his wife's trust and was now managing the aftermath. Saturday arrived with the kind of gray October sky that made Chicago feel like the edge of the world. Maya dressed in dark jeans and a sweater that felt like armor, then drove to Tessa's apartment in Lincoln Park. The building was old brick with tall windows and the kind of charm that cost extra in rent. Maya could hear laughter and music from the 3rd floor as she climbed the stairs, each step feeling like walking toward something she wasn't prepared to face. Tessa's apartment was small but warmly lit, filled with balloons and the scent of takeout food and cheap champagne. People Maya half recognized from previous family gatherings moved through the rooms, talking and laughing with the forced cheerfulness of mandatory celebration. Maya. Tessa appeared in the doorway, wine glass in hand and smile bright enough to power the building. I'm so glad you came. The hug Tessa gave her lasted 2 beats too long. And when she pulled away, her eyes searched Maya's face with the same invasive intensity Linda had shown at dinner. How are you doing? Tessa asked, her voice pitched just loud enough for nearby conversations to pause. I'm fine, Maya said, accepting the glass of wine Tessa offered. Happy birthday. Ray materialized at her side, his hand settling on her lower back with possessive pressure. Everything okay? He asked, but he was looking at Tessa when he said it. Perfect, Tessa said, her gaze moving between them like she was watching a tennis match. Just perfect. Maya spent the first hour moving through conversations that felt like social landmines. People asked how work was going, how she was feeling, whether she was settling in to anything new. Each question carried weight that felt disproportionate to its surface meaning. In the kitchen, Maya found herself standing next to Linda, who was holding court near the refrigerator with a small group of relatives Maya barely knew. Someone tried to log into my Medicare portal again last week, Linda was saying, waving a folded piece of paper like evidence. 3rd time this month. These scammers are getting more sophisticated. One of Ray's aunts made sympathetic noises. What did you do? Changed all my passwords. Again. Linda's voice carried the weary frustration of someone fighting a war she couldn't see. The thing is, families like ours can't afford more secrets. We have to protect each other. The word, secrets, made Maya's wine glass pause halfway to her mouth. What do you mean? Ray's cousin asked. Linda's eyes flicked toward Maya, then away. Oh, you know how it is. When people try to break up families from the inside, you have to be smart about who you trust. Maya felt her phone buzz and pulled it out to check. A text from Ray, please. Don't make a scene. The fact that he was texting her from across the same room made her stomach clench with something between anger and disbelief. Maya put her phone away without responding and tried to focus on the conversation around her. But Linda's words kept echoing. Break up families from the inside. As if Maya's sexuality was a weapon aimed at destroying something rather than simply a truth about who she was. The party continued around her, but Maya felt increasingly like she was watching it through glass. People laughed at jokes she didn't find funny. They talked about shared memories she hadn't been part of. They treated her with careful kindness that felt more like handling fragile goods than genuine affection. Then it happened. Maya was standing near the couch, listening to Tom tell a story about his golf game, when Ray's cousin Derek walked over with a beer in his hand and alcohol-bright eyes. Hey Maya, Derek said, swaying slightly. You're looking good. Relaxed. Thanks, Maya said carefully. Derek grinned. Ray's like that too, you know. Super chill about everything. The room didn't go quiet all at once. Instead, conversations died in waves, starting with the people closest to Derek and spreading outward until even the music seemed muted. Maya felt her heart start pounding. Like what? Derek's grin widened. He was clearly too drunk to read the sudden tension in the room. Come on, don't be shy. It's 2026. Nobody cares anymore. Ray appeared at Maya's side so quickly she wondered if he'd been watching Derek all evening. What are you talking about? Ray asked, his voice sharp enough to cut. Derek looked confused by Ray's tone. About you being. Shut up, Ray snapped. You're drunk. But Derek was already finishing his sentence. Gay. Or bi. Whatever. Like Maya. The silence that followed was absolute. Maya could hear her own heartbeat and the distant sound of traffic through Tessa's windows. Ray's face went white, then red, then white again. I'm not, he started, then stopped. Maya stared at her husband as understanding crashed over her like cold water. Ray's panic wasn't just about her truth being revealed. It was about his own. Ray? Maya's voice was barely a whisper. But Ray was already moving, pushing through the suddenly still crowd toward Tessa's bathroom. Maya heard the door slam and the click of the lock. The party resumed slowly, conversations starting again in artificial bursts. But Maya remained frozen by the couch, Derek's words replaying in her mind. Ray's like that too. Maya walked to the bathroom door and knocked gently. Ray? Go away, came his muffled voice. We need to talk. Not here, please. Maya leaned her forehead against the door. Then where? There was no answer. 20 minutes later, Ray emerged from the bathroom looking like he'd aged 5 years. His eyes were red-rimmed and his hair was disheveled from running his hands through it. We're leaving, he announced to the room in general. Maya gathered her coat without arguing. As they walked toward the door, she heard Linda's voice behind them. Ray, honey, wait. No, Ray said without turning around. Not tonight. The drive home was silent except for the sound of Chicago traffic and Ray's uneven breathing. Maya wanted to ask a dozen questions, but something about Ray's posture hunched over the steering wheel like he was trying to disappear made her wait. At home, they sat in their living room like strangers. Ray on the couch, Maya in the chair by the window. The distance between them felt geographic. Is it true? Maya asked finally. Ray's laugh was hollow. Does it matter? Of course it matters. Ray looked at her with eyes that held years of exhaustion she'd never noticed before. I've been attracted to men since I was 14, he said quietly. I thought marriage would fix it. I thought loving you would make it go away. Maya felt her chest tighten. Ray, I'm not gay, he said quickly. I love you. I chose you. But you're bisexual. Ray's silence was answer enough. Maya stared at her husband, the man who'd broken her confidence to protect his own secret. The man who'd let his family treat her like a problem while he hid the truth about himself. So when I told you I was bi, Maya said slowly, you weren't just managing your discomfort with my truth. You were protecting yourself. Ray's face crumpled. I panicked. When you said it, I thought somehow you knew. About me. So you told your family about me to take attention off yourself. No. Maybe. I don't know. Ray pressed his palms against his eyes. I was scared. Maya felt anger and pity warring in her chest. You threw me under the bus to save yourself. That's not what I meant to do. But it's what you did. Ray looked up at her with desperate eyes. How'd I fix this? Maya sat in the quiet of their living room, looking at the man she'd married. She saw the boy who'd learned to hide his truth so deep he'd forgotten where he'd buried it. She saw the husband who'd sacrificed her trust to protect his own fear. And she saw clearly, for the first time, that their marriage had been built on foundations neither of them had been honest about. I don't think you can, Maya said finally. At least not the way things were. Ray's face went pale. Don't say that. But Maya was already standing up, already walking toward their bedroom. I need time to think, she said. About all of this. She closed the bedroom door and sat on their bed, surrounded by the ordinary objects of their shared life. Ray's books on the nightstand. Her jewelry box on the dresser. Wedding photos on the wall that now looked like evidence of elaborate performances rather than celebrations of love. Maya had thought Ray's betrayal was about managing her truth. Now she understood it was about hiding his own. The question was, what did she do with that knowledge? Outside their bedroom, she could hear Ray moving around the apartment. Opening cabinets. Running water. The small sounds of someone trying to keep busy while their world fell apart. Maya lay down on their bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, she would have to decide whether Ray's fear justified his betrayal. Whether his own hidden truth made his violation of hers forgivable. Tonight, though, she just lay in the dark and grieved for the marriage she'd thought they had, and the honesty she'd thought they'd shared. Both had been illusions. The question now was whether they could build something real from what remained, or whether too much had been broken to repair. Maya closed her eyes and tried to imagine what that future might look like. But all she could see was the expression on Ray's face when Derek had spoken the truth Ray had been hiding for 15 years. Terror, relief, and something that might have been hope, if Maya was willing to call it that. But hope, Maya was learning, was a luxury she could no longer afford to give away without consideration. Maya lay awake until 3 in the morning, Ray's confession playing on repeat in her mind. When she finally fell asleep, her dreams were full of half-remembered conversations and moments that suddenly made terrible sense. She woke to find Ray already gone, a note on the kitchen counter saying he'd left early for work and would be home late. The apartment felt hollow without him, but also peaceful in a way Maya hadn't experienced in weeks. She called in sick to work and spent the morning sitting at their kitchen table with a cup of coffee that grew cold while she thought. The silence gave her space to remember things she'd overlooked, conversations she'd misunderstood, moments when Ray's behavior had seemed strange. But she'd accepted his explanations without question. Like their wedding day 3 years ago. Maya could see it clearly now, the small courthouse ceremony with just their immediate families present. She'd worn a simple dress her mother had helped her pick out. Ray had chosen a dark suit that made him look older, more serious than his 27 years. They'd stood before the judge with their hands clasped together, Ray's palm damp with nervous sweat. When the judge asked if they promised to love and honor each other, Ray's voice had cracked slightly on, "I do." Afterward, as they signed the marriage certificate, Ray had squeezed her hand and whispered, "Whatever happens, we keep it between us. Just you and me." At the time, Maya had thought he was talking about the intimacy of marriage, the private world couples create together. Now she understood he'd been talking about survival. Maya pulled out her phone and scrolled through old photos from their early relationship. Ray at her company Christmas party, his smile bright but his eyes watchful. Ray with her college friends, charming and funny but never quite relaxed. Ray meeting her parents for the first time, shaking her father's hand with just a little too much firmness, like he was trying to prove something. She remembered how he'd coached her before that first meeting. "Just be yourself," he'd said, "but maybe don't mention the whole exploring your sexuality thing." Not yet. Maya had agreed because it had seemed reasonable. New relationships were fragile. Parents could be judgmental. Better to wait until they were more established as a couple. But now she wondered if Ray had been protecting them both or just himself. Maya set down her phone and walked to the window. Outside, Chicago moved through its Tuesday rhythm. People walked to work, bundled against the October cold. Cars moved through intersections with mechanical precision. Life continued exactly as it had yesterday, but Maya felt like she was seeing it from a different planet. Her mind drifted to the early months of their marriage, when Ray had been sweet but nervous about physical intimacy. He'd blamed stress from his new job, from the adjustment to married life. Maya had been patient, understanding. She'd thought she was being a good wife. Now she wondered if Ray had been trying to convince himself he could want her enough to make their marriage work. The phone rang, startling her out of the memory. Linda's name appeared on the caller ID. Maya almost didn't answer. But something made her pick up on the fourth ring. "Hello, Linda." "Oh, Maya dear. I'm so glad you answered." Linda's voice was carefully modulated, like she was reading from a script. "Ray told me you weren't feeling well." Maya hadn't realized Ray had talked to his mother already this morning. The speed of their communication made her stomach clench. "I'm fine," Maya said. "Just tired." "Of course you are, honey. This whole situation has been stressful for everyone." Maya gripped the phone tighter. "What situation is that, Linda?" There was a pause. "Well, you know, family changes, new understandings. It's a lot to process." Maya closed her eyes. Even now, Linda couldn't say the word bisexual out loud. Linda, Maya said carefully, when did Ray first tell you he was attracted to men? The silence on the other end of the line was so complete Maya thought the call had dropped. Linda? I don't think that's something we should discuss over the phone. But Maya could hear the answer in Linda's voice. Linda had known. Maybe not everything, but enough. For how long? How long have you known? Maya asked directly. Linda's breath was audible through the phone. Maya, dear, some things are better left. How long? Another pause. Then, quietly, since he was in high school. I found letters from a friend. Maya felt something cold settle in her chest. Ray had been hiding his sexuality for 15 years, and his mother had been helping him do it. Does Tom know? Maya asked. Tom knows what he needs to know. Maya almost laughed at the careful phrasing. This family had turned secrets into an art form. So when Ray married me, Maya said slowly, you thought what? That I could cure him? I thought, Linda said, her voice sharpening, that he loved you enough to choose the life he wanted. And I still think that. Maya sat down heavily on the couch. Even if that choice meant lying to me? Not lying, just not sharing everything. Marriage requires discretion, Maya. Some things are better kept private. Whose privacy? Maya asked. His, or mine? Linda didn't answer directly. I think you should talk to Ray about this. Not me. The conversation ended shortly after, but Linda's words echoed in Maya's apartment long after she hung up. Marriage requires discretion. As if Maya's right to know the truth about her own husband was an invasion of his privacy rather than a basic requirement of honest partnership. Maya thought about the Medicare fraud letters Linda was always worried about. The identity theft warnings. The careful way Linda guarded her personal information from strangers who might use it against her. But she'd never protected Maya from her own son's deception. Maya spent the afternoon going through their shared belongings with new eyes. Ray's laptop, closed and password protected. His dresser drawer that stuck and that Maya never bothered to force open. The filing cabinet in their bedroom closet where he kept their tax returns and insurance paperwork. She wasn't snooping, exactly. More like seeing their life together as it actually was instead of how she'd assumed it to be. When Ray came home that evening, Maya was sitting at the kitchen table with a manila folder spread open in front of her. What's that? Ray asked, setting down his work bag. Our marriage certificate, Maya said. And the premarital counseling forms we filled out before the wedding. Ray's face went pale. Why are you looking at those? Maya held up one of the forms, pointing to a question about previous relationships and sexual history. Ray's answers were brief, vague. He'd listed 2 previous girlfriends but no men. Under areas of concern, he'd written, none. You lied, Maya said simply. Ray sat down across from her. I omitted things. You lied to me, and you lied to the counselor. You let me marry you under false pretenses. That's not. Ray. Maya's voice was quiet but firm. I love you. I have loved you for 4 years. But I can't be married to someone who treats honesty like a luxury rather than a requirement. Ray's eyes filled with tears. I was afraid you wouldn't want me if you knew. So you let me choose you without giving me all the information I needed to make that choice. Yes, Ray whispered. I'm sorry. Maya looked at her husband, the man who'd hidden fundamental truths about himself, then broken her confidence when her truth became inconvenient. I know you're sorry, she said. But sorry doesn't undo the last 3 years. Sorry doesn't give me back the choice you took away from me. Ray leaned forward. What do you want me to do? Maya closed the folder and looked at him directly. I want you to understand that this isn't just about you being bisexual. This is about you being willing to lie to protect yourself while expecting me to be honest no matter what it cost me. Ray's face crumpled. I know I messed up everything. Maya stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting behind Chicago's skyline, painting the apartment in golden light that made everything look softer than it was. I need time, she said without turning around. I need time to figure out what I can forgive and what I can't. And I need to do that without you trying to manage my process. How much time? Ray's voice was small. Maya finally turned to look at him. Ray was sitting at their kitchen table looking lost and young and completely unprepared for the consequences of his choices. I don't know, she said honestly. But probably more than you want to give me. Ray nodded, tears sliding down his cheeks. Can I stay here? On the couch? Maya considered the question. Part of her wanted to say no, to claim the space she needed to think clearly. But another part of her recognized that Ray was struggling with truths he'd been hiding for half his life. For now, she said. But Ray? No more secrets. No more family meetings about our business. And no more promises you're not prepared to keep. Okay, Ray said quickly. Yes, I promise. Maya almost smiled at how automatically the word, promise, came to him, even now. Don't, she said gently. Don't promise anything right now. Just, be honest, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Ray nodded and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I can do that. Maya hoped he was right. But she'd learned that hope without evidence was just another word for fantasy. And she was done living in fantasies, no matter how comfortable they used to feel. Maya spent the next week moving through her life like she was underwater. Work felt distant and unimportant. Conversations with friends required energy she didn't have. Even simple tasks like grocery shopping felt overwhelming, like she was learning to navigate a world where all the rules had changed overnight. Ray kept his promise about honesty, but the truth was almost harder than his lies had been. He admitted he'd been attracted to their neighbor Mark for over a year. He confessed that he'd created fake dating profiles to chat with men online, though he swore he'd never met anyone in person. He told her about the gay bars he'd driven past but never entered, and the articles about bisexuality he'd read in private browsing mode. Each confession felt like another weight added to Maya's chest. Not because Ray was bisexual Maya could have handled that truth, but because he'd built an entire secret life while expecting her to share everything. On Friday morning, Maya sat in her car outside her office building and called the number her college roommate had given her 6 months ago. Ruiz and Associates, a professional voice answered. I'd like to speak with Dana Ruiz about a consultation, Maya said, surprised by how steady her own voice sounded. What type of case? Maya paused, trying to find words for a situation that felt too complicated for simple categories. Privacy violation, maybe harassment, I'm not sure exactly. Can you come in this afternoon? Ms. Ruiz has an opening at 3. Maya looked at her calendar on her phone. She had meetings scheduled until 5, but nothing that couldn't be rescheduled. Yes, she said, I'll be there. Dana Ruiz's office was downtown in a building that smelled like coffee and copy toner. The waiting room had the kind of generic professional decoration Maya associated with places where serious business was conducted. Neutral colors, motivational posters about justice and perseverance, magazines about law and finance arranged on glass tables. Dana herself was younger than Maya had expected, maybe early 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a bun and the kind of direct gaze that made Maya feel like she was being evaluated but not judged. Tell me what's happening, Dana said, sliding a yellow legal pad across her desk. Maya had practiced this conversation in her car, but now that she was sitting in Dana's office, the words came out in a rush. My husband told his family I was bisexual after I specifically asked him not to. Then I found out he's been hiding the fact that he's bisexual too, and his family has known for years but helped him keep it secret. And now his mother is calling me and making comments about family secrets and how I need to be more discreet. Dana wrote notes while Maya talked, her pen moving in quick, efficient strokes. How long has this been going on? Dana asked. The family meetings started about 2 weeks ago, but I think they've been discussing my personal life longer than that. Do you have documentation? Text messages, voicemails, anything written down? Maya pulled out her phone and showed Dana the screenshots she'd been taking. Ray's text about needing to look normal at Tessa's party. Linda's voicemail about choosing sides. The note Maya had photographed on Linda's Medicare paperwork. Ray talked to U.S. She's bi. Dana studied the images, zooming in on the handwritten note. This is good, she said. Clear evidence of disclosure without consent. What can I do about it? Maya asked. Dana set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. Several things. We can file for a civil protection order if the harassment escalates. We can send cease and desist letters to establish boundaries. And depending on what else happens, we might have grounds for a lawsuit regarding breach of privacy. Maya felt something loosen in her chest. So this isn't just normal family drama? No, Dana said firmly. You have a right to control your own personal information. Your husband violated that right, and his family is continuing to violate it. They spent the next hour going through Maya's options. Dana explained the process for filing a harassment protection order, the documentation they would need, and the timelines involved. The key, Dana said, is establishing a clear pattern of unwanted contact and demonstrating that you've asked them to stop. Maya thought about Linda's phone calls, always framed as caring check-ins but feeling more like invasive surveillance. What if I don't want to destroy my marriage? Maya asked. I mean, what if Ray and I work things out? Dana's expression softened slightly. These legal protections aren't about punishment. They're about establishing boundaries. If your marriage survives this, it will be because those boundaries were respected. Maya left Dana's office with a folder full of forms and a list of next steps. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she had a plan instead of just pain. That evening, Maya sat at her kitchen table with the legal paperwork spread out in front of her. Ray was working late again, or at least, that's what he'd texted. Maya wasn't sure if she believed him, but she was grateful for the solitude. Her phone buzzed with a text from Linda, thinking of you, dear. Family dinners aren't the same without you. Hope you're taking care of yourself. Maya stared at the message for a long moment, then screenshot it and added it to the folder of documentation Dana had suggested she keep. The caring tone didn't hide the underlying message: you're missed because your absence is conspicuous. Maya typed back, thank you for thinking of me. I need space to process some things right now. Please respect that. Linda's response came quickly, of course, honey. But remember, we're here when you're ready to talk. Family problems don't solve themselves. Maya screenshot that message too, then typed, please don't contact me unless it's an emergency. I'll reach out when I'm ready. This time, Linda's response took longer. I hope you're not letting other people poison your mind against family. Some situations require discretion and patience. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she typed her final message, this is my decision. Please respect it. She turned off her phone and sat in the quiet of her apartment. Outside, Chicago moved through its Friday evening rhythm. Cars passed on the street below. Her neighbors were cooking dinner. She could smell garlic and onions through the thin walls. Normal life was continuing around her, but Maya felt like she was standing at a crossroads where none of the paths looked familiar. When Ray came home 2 hours later, he found Maya exactly where she'd been that morning, sitting at the kitchen table with documents spread out in front of her. What's all this? He asked. Legal advice, Maya said simply. Ray's face went pale. About what? About my options. For protecting myself. Ray sat down heavily in the chair across from her. Maya, please, don't do anything permanent. Not yet. Maya looked at her husband, the man who'd broken her trust, hidden fundamental truths about himself, and let his family treat her like a problem to be managed. Ray, she said quietly, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to protect myself. There's a difference. What does that mean? Maya picked up one of Dana's business cards and slid it across the table. It means I talked to a lawyer today about filing a harassment protection order against your family. Ray's face crumpled. They're not harassing you. They're trying to help. Help who? Because from where I'm sitting, they're helping you manage me. Not helping me process my own feelings about my own life. Ray was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was small and defeated. What do you want from me? Maya considered the question. What did she want? Ray to have never lied in the first place. His family to respect her boundaries. The last month to have never happened. But those were impossible wishes. What she needed were possible solutions. I want you to support me setting boundaries with your family, she said. Even if that makes them angry. Even if that makes family dinners awkward. Even if that means choosing my comfort over theirs. Ray nodded slowly. I can do that. And I want you to tell them yourself that they need to stop contacting me about our personal business. Okay. And Ray? Maya's voice was gentle but firm. If you can't do those things, if protecting me means losing something you're not willing to lose, then we need to talk about ending this marriage before we hurt each other any more than we already have. The words hung in the air between them like a challenge and an opportunity. Ray could choose her, finally and completely. Or he could choose the easier path of family peace and familiar secrets. Maya hoped he would choose her. But she was finally prepared for the possibility that he wouldn't. And for the first time since this whole mess started, that felt like progress rather than defeat. Maya filed the harassment protection order on a Tuesday morning that felt like the first day of her real life. She wore a navy blue dress that made her feel professional and sat in the courthouse waiting room, surrounded by other people dealing with other kinds of family crises. The building smelled like floor cleaner and coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. People spoke in hushed voices, like they were in a library dedicated to broken relationships and legal remedies. Dana sat beside her, reviewing their documentation one more time. "Remember," she said quietly, "this isn't about punishment. This is about establishing boundaries that protect your right to privacy and emotional safety." When their case was called, Maya walked into the courtroom on legs that felt steadier than they had in weeks. The judge was an older woman with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a practical style. She looked like someone who'd heard every possible variation of human drama and still managed to believe in solutions. Ray sat in the gallery with his family, Linda clutching her purse like a shield, Tom staring at his hands, Tessa avoiding eye contact with everyone. Ray looked smaller in his best suit, like he'd been diminished by the formal setting and the weight of official documentation. "This is a petition for civil protection," the judge said, reading from the paperwork Maya had filed. "Ms. Hart is requesting that the respondents cease contact regarding private personal matters disclosed without consent." Maya watched Ray's family as Dana spoke, outlining the pattern of unwanted contact and intrusive behavior. Linda's face grew increasingly pinched with each example. Tom kept checking his watch like he had somewhere more important to be. Tessa looked genuinely surprised, as if she'd never considered that her supportive comments might feel invasive. "Your Honor," Dana said, holding up printouts of the text messages and voicemails, "Ms. Hart specifically requested space to process a difficult situation. The continued contact, despite her clear boundaries, constitutes harassment." Ray's lawyer, a young man Linda had hired who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, stood to respond. "Your Honor, my clients are simply concerned family members trying to offer support during a difficult time. There was no malicious intent." The judge looked at him over her reading glasses. "Intent isn't the only consideration here, counselor. Impact matters too." Maya felt something shift in her chest when the judge said those words. Impact matters too. For weeks, Maya had been told that Ray's family meant well, that their intentions were good, that she should be grateful for their concern. Finally, someone in authority was acknowledging that good intentions didn't excuse harmful behavior. "Ms. Hart," the judge said, turning to Maya directly, "please tell me in your own words why you're seeking this protection order." Maya stood up, her hands steady as she faced the judge. "Your Honor, I shared personal information with my husband in confidence. He disclosed that information to his family without my permission. When I asked for space to process the betrayal, they continued to contact me with advice and commentary about my private life. I've asked them to stop, but they've interpreted my request for boundaries as a problem to be solved rather than a boundary to be respected." The judge nodded. "And what specific relief are you seeking?" "I want them to stop contacting me about my personal life. I want them to stop discussing my private information among themselves. And I want legal documentation that I have the right to control who knows intimate details about me." Ray's lawyer tried again. "Your Honor, these are family disputes that would be better resolved through counseling or mediation." "Counselor," the judge interrupted, "family relationships don't exempt people from respecting basic boundaries. Mrs. Hart has repeatedly requested space and privacy. That request should be honored regardless of family status." The judge reviewed the evidence Dana had presented: the screenshots of Linda's note, the voicemails about family loyalty, the text messages offering unsolicited advice. "This court finds that a pattern of unwanted contact exists despite clear requests to cease," the judge said finally. "The respondents are ordered to refrain from contacting the petitioner regarding personal matters disclosed without consent. Communication should be limited to emergency situations and coordinated through counsel if necessary." Maya felt tears she hadn't expected building behind her eyes. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief. Someone official had looked at her situation and agreed that she had the right to privacy. That her request for space was reasonable. That she wasn't overreacting or being too sensitive. Outside the courthouse, Linda made one final attempt at control. Maya, this is unnecessary, she said, approaching despite her lawyer's obvious discomfort. We're family. We can work this out. Maya looked at Linda, the woman who'd helped Ray hide his truth for 15 years while judging Maya for hers. Who'd treated Maya's sexuality like a family crisis requiring management. Linda, Maya said calmly, the court just established that family status doesn't give you the right to ignore my boundaries. Please respect that. Linda's face flushed. You'll regret this when you're older. Family is all you have in the end. Maya's friend Gloria, who'd driven down from the senior center to support Maya, stepped forward. Actually, Gloria said in her steady 71-year-old voice, family is what you make it. And it should be built on respect, not control. Maya hugged Gloria tightly, grateful for the reminder that chosen family could be stronger than biological obligation. Ray approached as his family walked toward their car. Ray, Maya said gently, whatever you want to say, save it for therapy. Both of us need professional help to figure out what comes next. Ray nodded, his eyes red but his voice steady. I called 3 therapists yesterday. I have appointments next week. Good, Maya said. So do I. They stood outside the courthouse in the October afternoon light, 2 people who'd loved each other, but hadn't known how to protect that love from fear and family pressure. Did I lose you? Ray asked quietly. Maya considered the question. You lost the marriage we had, she said finally. Whether we can build something different depends on whether you're willing to choose honesty over comfort. Every time. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Ray nodded. I want to try. Then try, Maya said. But don't try for me. Try for yourself. Figure out who you are when you're not managing everyone else's emotions. Maya walked to her car feeling lighter than she had in months. The legal protection order wasn't about punishment or revenge. It was about establishing that she had value as an individual, not just as a supporting character in someone else's family drama. On the drive home, Maya thought about the judge's words, impact matters too. She realized that for the first time in her marriage, someone had prioritized her experience over other people's intentions. That felt like justice. Not perfect justice, maybe, but enough to build a new life on. Whether that life included Ray remained to be seen. But either way, Maya would be building it as herself fully, honestly, without apology. And that felt like the most important victory of all. 6 weeks later, Maya woke up in her new apartment near the lakefront to the sound of seagulls and gentle waves. Sunlight streamed through windows she'd chosen herself, illuminating walls painted in colors that made her feel peaceful rather than anxious. The apartment was smaller than the place she'd shared with Ray, but every object in it was there because she'd decided it belonged. Her grandmother's quilt on the bed. Books arranged by preference rather than appearance. Coffee mugs that fit comfortably in her hands instead of matching some aesthetic she'd never chosen. Maya made coffee and opened the window to let cold December air wake her up completely. Chicago spread out below her, the city moving through its morning rhythm while she stood in a space that was entirely her own. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ray. Therapy went well yesterday. Dr. Martinez thinks I'm making progress. Hope you're doing okay. Maya had been receiving these updates for 3 weeks now. Ray was seeing an individual therapist and a support group for men questioning their sexuality. He sent brief, respectful messages that didn't ask for responses or demand her emotional energy. Just information, shared without agenda. Maya appreciated the change, though she wasn't ready to respond to most of his messages yet. Healing, she'd learned, required space that didn't include managing other people's feelings about her healing process. Her own therapist, Drive. Kim, had helped Maya understand that she wasn't responsible for Ray's emotional education or his family's comfort with her boundaries. You can be compassionate, Drive. Kim had said, without being responsible. Maya dressed for work and checked her calendar. It was Thursday, which meant volunteering at the senior center after her job at the marketing firm. She'd started helping with their fraud prevention workshops 6 weeks ago, teaching older adults how to recognize and report scams. The work felt meaningful in a way her corporate job sometimes didn't. Yesterday, she'd helped a 73-year-old woman named Ruth understand that the Medicare scam letters she'd been receiving were designed to steal her identity, not protect her benefits. The scary part, Ruth had said, is how official they looked. Like they really cared about my health. Maya had nodded, thinking about how manipulation often wore the mask of care. How control could disguise itself as protection. How violation of privacy could present itself as family concern. At work, Maya found herself focusing better than she had in months. Her supervisor noticed the improvement and assigned her a new project developing marketing materials for a mental health awareness campaign. The irony wasn't lost on her, but she threw herself into the work with genuine enthusiasm. During her lunch break, Maya walked to the nearby park and called Gloria. "How are you doing, sweetie?" Gloria's voice was warm through the phone. "Good," Maya said, surprised to realize she meant it. "Different, but good." "Different how?" Maya sat on a bench overlooking the lake, watching people walk their dogs and families feed ducks despite the December cold. "I wake up without dreading the day," she said finally. "I make decisions about small things, what to eat for dinner, which movie to watch, without wondering how someone else will react." "That's called freedom," Gloria said gently. Maya smiled. "Yeah, I think you're right." That evening at the senior center, Maya helped facilitate a discussion about family financial abuse. The stories shared in the group were different from her own but carried similar themes: trusted people making decisions about others' lives without permission. Family members prioritizing their own comfort over their relatives' autonomy. An 80-year-old man named Frank talked about his son taking control of his bank account, for his own good. A woman named Catherine described her daughter monitoring all her phone calls to protect her from scammers. Maya listened and occasionally shared her own experience with privacy violations, though she kept the details general. What mattered wasn't the specifics of what had happened, but the recognition that boundaries weren't suggestions. After the meeting, Gloria walked Maya to her car. "You know what I notice about you?" Gloria said. "What?" "You're not angry anymore. You're strong, but not angry." Maya considered this. "I think I was angry because I felt powerless. Now I feel like I have choices." "Do you miss him?" Gloria asked gently. Maya looked up at the stars barely visible through Chicago's light pollution. "I miss who I thought he was. But I don't miss the marriage we actually had. If that makes sense." "Perfect sense," Gloria said. "Grieving the fantasy is harder than grieving the reality sometimes." At home, Maya sat at her new kitchen table, a small round piece she'd found at a thrift store, and opened her laptop. She'd been writing lately, not for publication but for processing. Short pieces about truth-telling and boundary setting. Essays about the difference between love and loyalty. Tonight, she wrote about the moment in the courthouse when the judge had said her experience mattered. How validation from authority had felt different from self-advocacy, but both were necessary. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ray. "I know you're probably not ready to talk. But I wanted you to know that I told my family they need to apologize to you directly. Not through me. Whenever you're ready to hear it. No pressure." Maya stared at the message for a long moment. It was exactly the kind of communication she'd wanted from Ray during their marriage: clear, respectful, action-oriented without being demanding. She typed back, "Thank you. That means something." Ray's response was immediate: "I'm learning that meaning something requires doing something." Still learning, but trying. Maya smiled despite herself. Growth was possible, apparently. Even for people who'd spent years choosing comfort over courage. She didn't respond to Ray's message, but she didn't delete it either. That felt like its own kind of progress. Before bed, Maya stood at her window looking out at Lake Michigan. The water was dark except for reflections of city lights, and she could hear waves against the shore even from her third-floor apartment. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, afraid to speak her truth because she'd prioritized other people's comfort over her own integrity. Then she thought about the woman she'd been 3 months ago, learning to name violation and demand accountability. Now she was becoming someone new. Someone who could hold compassion for Ray's struggle while maintaining her own boundaries. Someone who could forgive without forgetting, and who could love without sacrificing herself. Maya touched her reflection in the window glass and whispered the words that had become her daily practice: "I'm safe. I choose what I share. My truth belongs to me." Outside, Chicago settled into its late evening quiet. But inside her apartment, Maya felt fully awake for the first time in years. Life doesn't end just because it breaks once. What falls apart can be the very place where we learn to stand again. If this story gave even a small moment of strength to someone out there, then everything I went through means something today. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe, and share a piece of your own story in the comments below. Your words might become the seed of the next chapter we create together. Thank you for spending